Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to look at expanding the objective system that we already have. We're going to refine that from the remedial content that we have, which is a basic collision box that we would have the player run over, and it would put this text on screen, and we could update that text here by changing it to whatever we needed for the specific area, and then it would clear itself off. We're going to lean into a bit more conventional representation of using an on-screen HUD to convey that text rather than the in-world flying text, which is neither diegetic nor helpful. So this is good for debug, but we can do better. So we're going to start off by creating a new asset. We're going to go over to our UI section and we're going to create a new widget blueprint. We're going to create a user widget and we're going to call it WBP HUD. And since this is a widget blueprint WBP, it shouldn't have any naming overload with your framework BP HUD. So we're going to open this up and we're going to create a basic layout for an on-screen HUD. So I'm going to add a canvas panel. We're going to add a border and some text. And this is going to allow us to frame things up so that we can have a space that is completely readable for the user and is going to be able to be edited dynamically. So having this border, I'm just going to rename this frame, and we're going to make that a variable. And then for the text, I'm going to call this text objective. And then for the frame, the text should also be a variable. And then for the frame, we're just going to drop the brush details here down to a dark gray that is mostly opaque, but not fully. And now we have this text that's going to be readable against any background, no matter what's going on inside of the game. If you're in a dark or bright space, I'll have the contrast necessary to read that. Notice I have this other panel down here called animations. This is what we're going to be looking at next. I'm going to go window animations to pull that up if you don't have it. With the animations panel, you can click this plus animation and create a new animation. We'll start with fade in. You can do fade in or fade out. That's going to be up to you, but basically do one and then clone it. We're going to click add, and we're going to add the frame. And then in the frame, we're going to add our brush color, and under the content section, the content color and opacity. If we expand both of those out, we have the RGB and the A values. We're interested in the A values. I'm going to click plus on each of the A's, and then we're going to move forward to 0.25 seconds, and then we're going to click a plus on each of the A's again. So now I have a value on both sides. For the fade in, we're going to go from nothing to something. So I'm going to select these first icons, and we're going to change those keyframes to 0. So if I go to scrub this, you should see it going from transparent to opaque. Perfect. Now I'm just going to duplicate this, and we're going to call this fade out. And make sure I have fade out selected. You'll notice it zoomed in on my keyframes. I can control a middle mouse wheel to scroll that out. And so what I want to do is I want to just flip these around. So I'm going to take the first keyframe and make it a 1, and take the second keyframe and make it a 0. Same thing for the content. So we'll start with 1 and 0. And now if we play this back by using the spacebar, you should see it moving from solid to nothing. And actually here, looks like this didn't take. There we go. So this is fade out, and this is fade in. So now we have a very quick representation of something softly coming in and out of the screen. That looks good. We're going to come over to our graph, and we're going to create a custom event here. And we're going to name that update objective. And what we want to do with this is we want to fade in from nothing with a new text, let that text rest on screen for a little bit, and then fade out after the end of it. So our object here is going to need to have a few inputs that are going to be passed through to the text that we're going to have. So first thing I'm going to need my animations fade in and fade out. If I come over here and do a get on each of these, or control click and drag, then I can say play animation from this, bring this over here, and then control D. We'll have the correct animation reference, and the target is going to be self. And then in between these, we're just going to have a delay, and that delay is going to tell us how long that the text should be on screen before fading out. And so this duration, I can click and drag it over here. You'll see if I put it onto an event, it'll ask to add pin to node. And so now that event is going to request that information from whoever is calling it, and then it'll pass that information that it gets along here. We're just going to make this a little bit more readable. And that should clean it up for us some. And then we're going to call this from a specific environment, but we need to modify the text. Otherwise, we're just going to be flashing the same information over and over again. So that environment's going to also pass us the text field. So if we want, we can set up the code for updating the text. Here's my text objective. And I want to set text there. And so I can just pull this in the middle. And we're going to get this right over here. If I wanted to get this set up a little differently, I could select the event and I could just add a new input to it. And I could say objective text as the value and change this to a text variable. And then now it shows up here. And I want these to be in a different order just so I don't have to have the wires crossed. There we go. So this is going to give us the ability to change the text, have it fade in, have it fade, stay on screen for a while, and then have it fade out. And this is all we need to do right now with the HUD object. What we're going to do now is use something that'll keep us from having to directly reference this or run a cast. We're going to use a new Blueprint device that we haven't talked about yet called an interface. Most scripting languages and programming languages use interfaces, but the idea of what an interface is, it's the same between them, and in Unreal we just implement it a little bit differently. We're going to go to our utilities folder here. I'm going to right click, go to Blueprint here. You'll notice that I can choose Blueprint class here from the common list, but also from here, and I can go down to Blueprint Interface. Our prefix for this is BPI, Blueprint Interface, and we're going to call this HUD Updates. So if we have any sort of updates in the HUD that we want to be able to send out from anywhere to the HUD, we're going to use this BPI HUD Updates. What an interface is the way to communicate that there is some action that's going to happen, some function or event that's going to be called, but the implementation is going to be left up to whoever is doing the initiation or doing the receiving of it. So if there's something to be talked about, then the interface is going to tell us how to talk about it, but it's not going to tell us what to be done. So in this particular case, we're going to call this update objective text. And so this update objective text is going to throw new text to a interface, and whoever implements the interface is then going to call the function that's going to tell it what to do with that information. So we're going to add 2 inputs here, and if you can predict based off of what you've already seen, these should be apparent to you. We're going to have this be the objective text, and we're going to make this a text object. And then we're going to have this one be the duration. And that's just going to be a float. So now when I compile, and with interfaces, it's a little bit finicky in the system. You should compile when working with interfaces, either implementing them or declaring them. When you compile, now this interface, this event, is available anywhere inside of Unreal. So I have this update objective, but I could also do update objective, and this is under the BPI. It's looking for the BPI updates. So it's looking for this interface, and so this is going to call it on some target. You notice it's looking at a generic object reference. It's not looking for any specific type of object. It's just going to try it. And the beauty of interfaces is that if you build them properly, they're going to save you a lot of headache, and they're incredibly safe to use, because when they fail silently. That's a blessing and a curse, really, because that means it's not going to throw an error, so it won't cause a bug or crash your system. But also, if it's not working the way you want, it's not going to tell you. So just be mindful that them failing silently means you can throw an interface at pretty much anything, and it will only fire if whatever you're throwing it at implements that interface. So after we get this set up, that event is taken care of, we're actually going to go to our BP HUD and set up an implementation for an interface. So we're going to go to our framework, and this is our gameplay HUD. We're going to come in here, and to implement an interface, you need to go to the class settings for that class. And you'll see in the details panel that you can have interfaces. There's inherited interfaces, which means that you've implemented an interface in some parent class that this is a child of, or you're going to implement the interface in this class by itself. I'm going to type in BPI to get my interface and choose HUD updates. Now it already appears over here on the side, but you won't be able to fully implement it until you compile. So clicking compile and then save. Now when I have this, I can right click and I can set implement interface. So now when I implement it, you'll notice that we get this new icon. This is the interface icon for Blueprints. This tells me that this is going to call to something that is going to implement it somewhere else. So when some function anywhere calls implement interface, if it happens to be calling it on the HUD, this HUD specifically, then this function will fire. And if it calls it on anything else, it will do nothing. So when we get our objective text and our duration, we want to be able to send that somewhere. We created inside of our widget blueprint a function that will handle objective text and duration specifically on what to do with this HUD. As it turns out, we're going to need to add the HUD widget to our on-screen HUD class. So we're going to do the same thing we did here. We're going to create the widget. When I go create widget and I select WBP HUD, and I'm going to get the owning player, it's the same owning player here. I'm going to promote that to a variable, HUD ref. I need to call this inside of the chain here. So what I can do, we'll use a little set of flow control options that we have. I might want to create a sequence that allows me to connect multiple things here, so I can add execution lines without having to add depth to my execution. So it will do this one, and then it will do this one. And if I wanted, I could take each of these, and I could connect them to the same player screen if I wanted to add to player screen here. I'm going to have them be separate for now, simply because we don't want to have to deal with race conditions until we get to talk about timing events later. All right, so we're going to add this to the player screen, and then we're also going to set visibility. All right, so if I take this and duplicate it down here, this is going to be collapsed by default. So this means that if I don't hook this up, when I go to play, I have my objective on screen. And if I do, then it's hidden like everything else. Up to you and how you want to handle that, but we're going to leave that hidden for now. But now that we have our HUD reference, and our HUD includes this update objective function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say update objective. Oh, actually, I'm going to need to pull that from, apologies for stepping on myself here, from the HUD reference. There we go. So you can see this is the difference between the BPI, it's update objective text, and this is just update objective. So when I have this, I can take this text and I can throw it from the interface call to the function, and here, again with the duration, the same thing is going to occur. So there's no default value for the duration, there's no default value for the text. This interface is just passing through that there is such a thing as objective text, there is such a thing as duration. And then the function that we created has been built to receive those. So now what we have to do is update something to create a effect that will call this implementation. So what we're going to do is we're going to revisit our old quest trigger. Now, I believe we have one of these quest triggers still sitting here in the world. So text needed, we'll change this to get the MacGuffin. So right now, if I play, it's going to pop this text up there. What I'd like is for it to update the text on the corner of the screen. So when we open up this quest trigger, all the previous things that I've implemented that were debug, which were for the early prototyping stage, are in yellow. We did a lot of code here to get things to face the player screen. It was a middle ground to creating a better system. So we don't need to add this timer to update where the text is pointing. We don't need to have a orientation check for the text that's going to be drawn in the world, because we're not going to be drawing that text in the world. In fact, we don't need the text render at all, so I can get rid of all of this information. And I'm left with the ability to check if the player is the thing that's overlapped, and then do once, send out information, and then destroy the actor. I only need the destroy actor now because my delay is going to be happening inside of my implemented class inside of BP HUD. So the delay is going to be coming here. I'm going to send in my delay information. So for the quest trigger now, once I get to the do once, I verified it's the player that has touched the quest, I'm going to look at BPI and it'll show me that I have a function I can call update objective text. So right here I can take my quest text, plug that in here, and the duration. The question that I need to answer is, what is the target that I'm going to be affecting by this BPI? And the answer is going to be that I'm going to get the HUD, which is going to require that we reference the player controller. And so if I get the player controller and get HUD, then I can send this to our specific class without having to check to see if our current HUD is actually the class that I've designed. I could send this in the main HUD or in the gameplay HUD or any other system HUD that I would have. If I'm checking the HUD, if it implements this interface, then it will send off this information and execute appropriately. And then afterwards, I'll just destroy the actor. So if this works the way that we think, I should get an update in my upper left corner that says to get the MacGuffin. Oh, let's see if we've missed a step here. This interface should check to see if it's the player. Did I delete anything here? So 5 seconds is our duration, get the MacGuffin. We have our blueprint, which is going to reach out to the HUD. The current HUD should be implementing our interface, and that's going to be calling to update objective, which is going to get this on screen, run the delay, and then take it off screen. Let's just verify real quick. Oh, we haven't had our visibility check. Let's take off our visibility. We are setting it invisible for now. We can control that in just a sec. So whenever they run over that in the screen, get the MacGuffin will pop up on screen, and then after 5 seconds, it should fade back out. So this is really good for getting us a one-off, but if the player forgets what they're doing, you want to give them the option to maybe see the objective inside of the pause screen. So for us to get this inside of the pause screen, then we'll have to go back to our UI pause, and then inside of our graph, I'm sorry, not for the UI pause, the player controller. Forgive me for the misdirect. Inside of our player controller, where we actually control the pause, we're just going to fire off a search for this BPI objective, and we're going to update the text with nothing, and we're going to add 5 seconds. And then we need to go back to our HUD to be able to control what we want to do when we get 0 objective text updates. And since we're in the player controller, we can just say get HUD, and then that should update for us. All right, so the interface is going to check on the HUD. It's going to send that information. Because we're already getting a HUD reference, we can pull that in as well. They would both work. We're going to go back to our WBP, the widget for the HUD, and we're just going to create a little logic here that says if this text is empty, do we want to run a check? So if the text is empty, then we're just going to come over to play animation. And if it's not empty, then we're going to update the text and then run the animation after that. And so this will allow us, at any time we want to call the objective, without having to change it, then we can just call it with a null text field, and that will give us the update we need. So if I come in, touch the block, get the MacGuffin is on screen, after 5 seconds, that'll fade out, and then when I click pause, it'll come back in, and that'll fade out after 5 seconds, either on the pause screen or afterwards. We can include a few more quality of life issues like getting on the screen only when the pause screen is up, or having the duration be infinite while it's on the pause screen, and when you close the pause screen, the objectives fade out. But those are all quality of life issues that you can assign per game. Hopefully, the idea of what an interface is, how to get the communication between in-world objects and on-screen objects is a little bit more apparent, and all this allows you to go out there and keep building.